organisations, local researchers, government partners, implementers, and so use this opportunity as well with all the people in this room to start conversations and start talking to other people if you think that you might be interested in this research programme. So, over to you. Yeah. So questions, reflections, if there's any clarification that you'd like to ask for, or thoughts. Do we have another microphone anywhere? Oh, all right, great. Sorry, everybody's standing behind you. I'm Sasha Gallagher with Evidence Action. I was just wondering, do you expect the funds for this to be exclusively for evidence generation around the programs themselves, or could any of the funding go toward new or scaling programs that are being evaluated? So I think that's a really good question, and it's something that we're grappling with at the moment. So how much of this... I don't know what's that interacting with. How much of this should be pure research funding, and how much of this should actually go to support scale up and actually provide some operational funds. So again, if you've got any thoughts or comments on that, then we'd be really interested to hear.
And this is, as Amy said, we're doing quantum thinking on exactly that issue. Some of the other larger scale research programs that we have been designed in the research and evidence division have built that in, sort of an implementation fund, for example. We have to be quite judicious in how that is presented, because we are the research and evidence division and we have discrete funding streams for our programmatic work, as Amy said, primarily through our country offices. So we would like to build that in. We think it's important to meet the operationally relevant objective of the piece, but we will need to be judicious how we do that. But having said that, we have got some precedent for that having been done previously. So do watch this space and do feed in with more ideas. Please.
Hi. So I assume you want not only... Okay, without slimming, I'm from South Africa. So my question is, you were saying you're looking for few larger scale projects. My assumption there would be that you're looking at perhaps some multi-country studies, not only singular countries. And that's the assumption I've drawn, so maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Southern Africa is completely off your list. I understand that that's perhaps because you're not that active in some of those countries, but if there are Southern African partner, so you could have, if there's a multi-country study, you could have countries in different regions. And so would that be considerable, or are they completely off the cards? Because what we're struggling with in some African countries is not only where there is very little, but also where there may be a lot, and how do you work in that context? So it's that thing about contextual differences, which may actually also help your questions about efficacy and effectiveness.
So in terms of multi-country, one of the things that we want to get out of this are transferable lessons. So there is a really delicate balance to be struck between conducting research at scale, which is contextually rooted and relevant within the countries where the intervention is being implemented, with being able to draw out from that generalizable lessons and transferable lessons across borders. But that latter point will be an objective, but how we do that is yet to be designed, and that will, I think, largely come through, we would hope, sort of innovative consortium bids in for the work. We've had some quite interesting conversations with the UNICEF Office of Research and a couple of people there. I don't know if we have any UNICEF people in the room, but the INNOCENTI Office of Research, that message has been, they've relayed that message about generalisability across borders quite strongly as well. In terms of Southern African countries, yes, what we put up there is just what's emerged to us so far in terms of the likeliest opportunities for at-scale research opportunities amongst our own portfolio. As we said, we're partnering with the World Bank already, and are very cognizant of that, how the World Bank is working, and Amanda showed that graph of increasing World Bank ECD investments. We're cognizant that will throw up really good quality research opportunities as well. How we then get that set up such that a research program is complementing that intervention is something we still need to work through. Doing it within a DFID program is a little bit simpler in the first instance, so that's not an exclusive list, it's just the emerging priority list at this stage.
And so something, again, that's the first point around generalisability versus contextual. I think one thing that we will build into the terms of reference is something about measurement and outcomes, and something that we would expect there to be similar approaches across the programme, so that would enable that generalisability from at least a first step. But we would also be expecting, again, it's the balance in procurement about how much do you set out every single thing that you might want, which then might stifle some creativity from those bidding in. So I think that's for us to work out where that balance is, but we would certainly have something in there about ensuring generalisability of measurement of outcomes. And the other thing is that we would like to see a real range of countries at different stages of their ECD journey. So again, that would be something that we would probably put into the terms of reference around some kind of typologies, or something around countries that are at a really early stage but want to do something, and countries that are actually quite a way down the line, but that there are still real lessons to learn about quality and reaching every child.
Work away. Can we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 6.
Okay.
And also, just on that, there is a form going round.
Please, there is a form going around. Please fill it out, because this for us is a consultation, and then we're able to say just how many people we have consulted with, and in the name of making an incredibly compelling case to our ministers back in London, being able to say just quite who we've spoken to has fed in will be very powerful for us. So if you haven't yet filled out that form, please do. Thank you.
It's a way to get the slides.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I go ahead?
Please, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that wonderful presentation. My name is Dr. Rita Takona, and I'm from Mount Kenya University. And two issues that I would like us to address in early childhood, and probably do more research. Yesterday, the governor presented something to do with free ECD programs. However, there are two issues that still will continue to affect those ECD programs. Number one is class size, and number two is poverty. And I'm just wondering whether you people are interested in somebody to do a research on class size and poverty, because that is what is also going to be affecting the future of the training. Because when I look at, I was trained in the US, and I know the class size for early childhood is 15 children with a classroom aid. And when you compare in Kenya here, we have a class of 42, 52, depending on the location. So I'll be so much interested in doing a research on class size and poverty, and how it affects the outcome of the ECD learners. Thank you very much.
Take the range of questions, I think.
Thank you very much. My name is Abuchi Zogutu. I work for ICSSP. We do parenting programs and we strengthen child protection systems in Kenya, Tanzania, and Cote d'Ivoire. Within the region, there's been an increase in research to do with efficacy and effectiveness. What we find a little bit missing and challenging are costing studies. So when we want to go to scale, governments would ask practitioners would also ask what is the cost of delivering an intervention, and we see less of this. We're wondering whether this is part of the considerations you're making as well.
Yes, my name is Cosmas. Cosmas Gato, I work with RTA International. So I have two questions or two concerns. One is it's a good thing that DFID is now coming into the sector of early childhood and trying to initiate research into it. It's also good to notice that there have been some initiatives in the same area. For example, the people have been doing research in the same. Would it be really, is it part of your plan to merge your research with the existing setup in place? Two, it's working with government. So, of course, the government has its systems of working, and they'll be curious to know whether what form of engagement do you want to do with the government. Like, for example, do you want to do an on-budget support for the government for ECD, or maybe an off-budget where you have partners working with government for the ECD sector?
My name is Judy from Kenyatta National Hospital, Nairobi, Kenya. One of the issues that would be of interest could be targeting children with mental health illnesses and doing researches around that, possibly to find out the outcomes, mental health outcomes. And at Kenyatta National Hospital, there's a collaboration between University of Washington, Kenyatta National Hospital, and University of Nairobi. So I think an entry point of DFID might be through universities and hospitals to target researches that are relevant and probably even with long-term outcomes.
My name is Agupina Hadish from Tanzania. I actually got an opportunity to participate in some sessions and the research is going on under RISE. And one of the concerns I raised, I was working with the education sector then. One of the issues I raised was the fact that when you link this type of research with the ongoing projects, the research tend to lean towards what the objectives of the ongoing project are. And I think this is something that I would ask that you take into consideration, because for instance, one of the studies that was being presented had taken a sample from specific regions and districts where the program was being implemented, which actually was a concern in terms of the sampling and the methodology that can, at the end of the day, you would question whether the findings are project evaluation or not. So although it's actually good to link, it's still important to make sure that you observe that the methodology and the sampling procedures would not consider what the objectives of the ongoing projects are. And the second one I noticed was as well that the research were heavily leaning towards academia. So you had the people from higher learning institutions engaged in the research, and I think there's a lot to learn from civil society organizations. So I'm wondering whether there could be a need to learn from practitioners, because I was implementing a program there, and sometimes when we get the research that's been done by academics, so it tends to not be that practical. It tends to not look at the actual experiences in the field. And I think this is an opportunity. This team is really rich, as you've seen. So I think you will need to open it up. And as you know also, DFID works with governments and tends to provide support through frameworks. And I'm just wondering how individuals or civil society organizations will be given an opportunity to apply for these grants independently without being put into a framework where they can be in disadvantage when it comes to computation. Thank you. I'm Helen from the Ministry of Education, Technical Officer. I just wanted to ask, in the process of doing your research, do you incorporate the aspect of learners with special needs as a component? Because we realize there's a very strong correlation between early childhood and learners with special needs, that the earlier we are able to identify them, assess them and put in place intervention measures, then the better for them. So I would wish that we don't become silent on this issue, that we bring out the aspect of learners with special needs. Thank you.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah. So I've scribbled a lot of notes. Let's see if I can remember what some of the questions were. And if we don't address any of your questions, we're here until tomorrow, so please do come and talk to us in more detail about it. So there was a question to start with around, are we interested in class size and poverty? And I think certainly yes, as a broad approach. I think we want to take a systems approach to this research, and so looking at all sorts of things that impact on things like class size, so appropriate enrolment, access. So I think it's also it's that balance again between how much we will define the research questions as DFID and how much we will actually be looking for those research questions to be emerging from the partnership that we are working with. So 100% that is a real issue for early childhood development, and particularly quality early childhood development at scale. The focus of this research is likely to be systems that influence good quality early childhood development. So there may well be some questions around that coming up, but within that systems approach and thinking about at scale, how do we do a good quality. The colleague who talked about, are we thinking about costing studies? Fundamentally, yes. I think without the costs, how can you scale up? Because we don't know what we're doing. The money is, I think I have a background in health systems research and other things, and without the money, nothing happens. You can have all the goodwill in the world, and I think really good quality costing that looks at return on investment as well as the kind of unit costs of how to deliver something, and also the difference between delivering something as a pilot and delivering something at scale. So yes, that will definitely come through. Are we going to merge our research with existing research? Again, I think that's something for whoever is bidding in to tell us how they're going to do that, but we certainly want to be building on both the existing evidence base but also the existing research partnerships that are going on. So what we're looking for is really innovative bids that show how they've got some good research partnerships between government and researchers, and are building on those, not necessarily, so some things might start from scratch, but actually we would also like to see things that are really building on a firm evidence base that already exists, and some of those partnerships that already exist. Should I just keep going, or do you want to? Disability has come out a couple of times, and I think that's really important. As you may know, DFID hosted a disability summit a couple of weeks ago, so disability is really important, but it's also part of the bigger inclusion agenda. So it's that we don't want to leave any child behind, and it's the balance between universal and targeted early childhood development, and it also includes gender, poverty, rural, urban, all of those issues, and disability is a huge one that we want to make sure is reflected in this work.
There was a question from a colleague in Tanzania about which to paraphrase what I think you were saying, sort of balancing academic rigour with being sort of practical and flexible and working with those people on the ground. That was sort of the two parts of your question. So I mean, that's, I guess, the ideal world, right, where you are working with those people very closely on the ground, doing what they're doing through a very, very academically rigorous way that's going to generate outputs which are not just targeted at those few people that read journals, but have a wide and accessible sort of readership. So, that's the goal. How we get there is what we're still working through. And I think it sort of summarises some of the other questions that were made, including the one, I think, was it from Cosmos, about how we might work with government. That is all part of that. And the way DFID works, and as Amy's already mentioned a couple of times, is that we set the framework and then we go to the market, essentially, and invite good quality bids from the people who are best placed to do the work. And so what we will be looking for when we go out to the market is for people to tell us how they will achieve exactly that. How they are going to both generate academically rigorous work, which is both sort of rooted in experience on the ground, but which is then accessible to a wide range of people, including fundamentally decision makers, be those government policy makers and implementers, or those in positions with agencies or NGOs where they're also making big, important spending decisions about ECD delivery. So, in as much as saying, yes, we agree with the problem that you've set out, how that problem is solved, we've got a bit of thinking to do our side, but we will also be expecting to do that thinking in collaboration with our research partners once we go to the market and invite bids in. And I think that also speaks to the question from Judith about working with universities. Again, that's part of that wider thing. Where there is good work going on or good institutions that can be part of consortia that are bidding in, by all means, yes, we would be looking to those kinds of bids, certainly.
Just on that, so what we will be looking for is a research programme consortia, so we won't be dealing with just one partner, but we will be expecting bids from consortia. So get talking to your colleagues in this room, get talking to academics that you know who are working on this, and build some interesting partnerships. Give us a real challenge of who to award this contract to by the quality of bids that are coming in. And just quickly on that, in terms of timescales, because I don't think we've talked about that, have we? So we are aiming to get a business case signed off by our minister by the end of the year. That will mean that we can then start procurement next year at some point. And DFID procurement processes are really slow, so it's likely that research will begin the year after that, so 2020. So those are the kind of time frames. But the call for research programme consortia will likely happen early next year at some point.
Should we go to our next round of questions? We're going to start here, and if we go number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. Number 6. Great, we do another 6. Remember your numbers, please.
Around 6. Thank you so much. My name is Anna Tenorio. I work with World Vision International. Wanted first just to appreciate the work that you've been doing. It really comes through that you think through this a lot, that you're trying to find the right balance in a very difficult system and mechanism that you use to find meaningful research. So just want to appreciate your hard work and wish you the best getting it approved. I had many questions, but I prioritized 2. So the first one was about, I love the systems approach and how you're also looking at the operational research. Can you explain a little bit more what that means to you? Because, so is it implementation research? Are you looking at quality, minimum standards, or some sort of standards that everyone would be looking at? Because at the end, when we see a lot of these big studies, sometimes what it's missing is what a colleague was saying in the back in terms of what makes the program work, really. Those intangibles that sometimes don't come through in research. So I know that the answers to these questions are hard, but it's worth trying to find the right balance, because if not, we don't really understand how to scale up. Then the second, does the systems approach preclude? So you have many research initiatives. I heard about the knowledge management one in fragile emergency contexts. So emergency fragile contexts sometimes get forgotten. They're in a vacuum because they're not in an established system. Governments have refugees and displaced populations that don't belong to them. They're not their citizens, so they can be kind of set aside. So have you given thought about how you plan to include this type of population in your research, especially because of what the world looks today, and that's where the most vulnerable children are at this moment. And the third is a methodology question. Are you going to discuss the theory of change? Are you looking for comments on this, or this is pretty much? So a very specific question, and I'm sure you have a rationale for this. Why do you divide these two outcomes? The literacy, numeracy, non-cognitive, school readiness, and then on the other side you have the mental, physical outcomes for children, improved well-being for caregivers. So I'm a developmental psychologist, so I'm really interested in understand how was that set up, and are you thinking in terms of interventions, programs, systems? Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for this presentation. First, thank you for that. I just want to ask 3 questions. One is about different governance structures. Like in Kenya, we are in 2-tier. Today, we are working with the county governance, and ECD affairs is largely devolved. I really want to know which is going to be your entry point, because we have had lots of problems with the ECD sector. There's a lot of wrangles between the county governments and the national governments, and this is slowing down the pace and the progress in which we can be able to do particular interventions with young children just in time. The other thing I want to ask is about likely in Africa, in terms of heavy data that you could get even from the World Bank and statistics that are preferably credible. We have specific things that have really come and they are really glaring that we may not need really to do research on them, but specific things like in these government ministries, there are glaring things. Even in this conference, we have had about conversations that things are already has a lot of evidence that just needs interventions. So do you think you have, you've thought about certain things that you really want to just intervene on rather than just getting again data on it, because I think we have enough data that we can refer to. The last question is about nurturing care framework is another good conversation that has really dominated this conference this week. And I just want to know, as you go to prepare in terms of waiting for those bids, there are possible themes that you can already outline for us that you think you can be able to work with, because I know early childhood education or children's needs are enormous. So which are your priority areas as you start? Thank you.
Every speaker has 3 questions. You may have to take some further.
Voilà, bonjour. Merci pour la qualité de la présentation. Moi, j'avais 2 à 3 questions à poser. La première... Non. Donc, moi, je m'appelle Ousmane Diouf. Je suis le directeur de l'éducation préscolaire au Sénégal, au ministère de l'Éducation nationale. Clair. Ok. Voilà, donc je vais voir aujourd'hui la première question. Je voudrais savoir si les pays francophones d'Afrique peuvent avoir le privilège de vous accueillir. Je trouve que ce que vous faites est tellement important. Ça, c'est la première question. La deuxième question, depuis hier, on a parlé des problématiques auxquelles les pays sont confrontés dans le cadre de la prise en charge de la petite enfance. C'est la question de la qualité, c'est la question de l'accès. Alors, dans certains pays comme le nôtre par exemple, l'option du gouvernement c'est de passer par l'offre communautaire. Et c'est une offre qui génère beaucoup de problèmes. Donc, c'est quoi?
La cour de traduction.
Ah bon? Donc je continue par rapport à l'offre communautaire. Je disais que c'est l'option de la plupart de nos pays. Et c'est une offre qui crée beaucoup de problèmes. En termes de formation, en termes de mise en place de structures, en termes de motivation du personnel, etc. Donc en termes de respect des normes. C'est dans ce cadre-là d'ailleurs que nous au Sénégal, nous envisageons de faire une étude qui va nous permettre d'adresser ces questions-là pour modéliser, pour avoir un modèle, une approche communautaire qui soit soutenable mais qui soit efficace du point de vue de la qualité. C'est pourquoi je voudrais savoir à votre niveau, est-ce que vous avez fait des études dans ce sens ou bien si vous envisagez de le faire. L'autre question, je n'ai pas senti l'évaluation des performances des élèves dans vos projets. Est-ce que c'est pris en compte? Parce que ça permet aussi de revenir sur la qualité, la qualification des enseignants qui sont chargés d'encadrer les élèves. La toute dernière question porte sur l'éducation parentale. Est-ce que vous l'avez pris en compte? Parce qu'on l'a dit hier, on l'a dit même aujourd'hui. C'est important que la tranche d'âge 0,3 ans ou 0,2 ans soit bien pris en charge. Et il y en a même qui parlent d'une articulation entre les 0,2 ans et les 3, 5 ans ou 3, 6 ans. Donc c'est éminemment important de travailler sur cette question-là. Merci. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. My question is about, I'm a member of the British Institute. I wanted to know whether you are, is it different with this research, British Institute? Yeah.
Sorry, the British Institute of East Africa? Or?
Yeah, East Africa.
So we are not associated with the British Institute directly, but we can talk about that.
Okay.
I'll go next, yeah. Melanie Swan from Plan International. I also think this is a very exciting initiative, and I think overall the way forward, I'm sure I've got other little comments and questions, but overall the way forward looks really interesting. A couple of quick questions. We heard during the presentation of the Nurturing Care Framework about the idea of the pyramids in terms of the types of interventions, universal for all, targeted for the most vulnerable and excluded, and then indicated, I think, which is, we find a little bit of a weird word, but for instance for children with a disability. Is this potentially something that you're looking at as well in terms of what's needed in different contexts at these different levels? In terms of programs, services and interventions, which you use quite interchangeably in this theory of change, which can be a bit confusing. And then you use programs, services and interventions a little bit interchangeably here, which might be a bit confusing. And then, and it might be because I can't see the two boxes at the very bottom between efficacy and cost effectiveness. I think you're saying you're looking at efficacy where there's a gap around understanding what works. Cost effectiveness in terms of are interventions cost effective when delivered at scale, but is this also going to be looking at the sort of joining up of these two, implementation research of the actual scaling up process and how you identify the core components, how you adjust and adapt, what you need to do along the way to take things to scale?
Thank you. I've lost track a little bit of how many.
Should we take those? Because I think
Yeah.
we're also supposed to finish in 5 minutes, so that will probably take us up. But please do come and talk to us if you've got any more comments. We're really interested to hear. And you can email us.
Okay, where do we start? Shall we? Okay, shall I? So I'm going to start with Anna's question, which I actually think part of the answer links to your question, Melanie. So the sort of the systems approach and the operational research, I think for us,
involves understanding the processes of scale and the enabling environment for scale. So we don't just want to know whether an intervention works at scale in terms of impact. We can set those studies up relatively easily, and some of them have already been done. What's, I think, far more interesting and useful for the people in this room and further afield is how do we get there? What is it that is required to achieve those impacts, and what is required in different contexts in terms of the relevant and requisite processes, people, institutions and structures within which all of those things operate. And that's what I think we mean by operational and sort of implementation research. And I think that speaks to another question which talked about methodology, which is almost certainly through this research program we will have some RCTs commissioned. But as has been discussed in other sessions at this conference and earlier in the week, sort of RCTs are not the be-all and end-all of evidence generation. And certainly as we are leaning toward trying to understand how to implement, a range of big, expensive RCTs will not deliver us that information. And so as we showed on the little graph, if I can go, which way is it? Is it this way? Oh yeah. You can, along our x-axis here, we have a mix of, we want to commission research which has a mix of quantitative and qualitative methodologies, because just one or just the other won't generate what it is we want to do, want to find out about. And there was something else I was going to say about that. I'm going to hand it to you.
Yeah, think about it. The issue from our colleague in Senegal, Francophone countries, DFID doesn't currently work in Francophone countries, as you know, so it's not something we've been talking to our country advisors about. However, we are scaling up some work across the Sahel, so it might be something that is increasingly relevant. We would like to set up this research program in such a way that it is flexible to respond to emerging issues and new countries. So it's likely that we will start off with a number of countries, but if we're able to, if our procurement allows us to, lots of rigid procurement rules, but if we can do something that enables us to start with a number of countries, but also have some funds that enable us to respond as new countries are developing interesting ways of implementing ECD, then it might be possible for those to join at a later stage. So I think that's really important. I think you raised a really important question around are we interested in the role of parents and communities, and thinking also particularly about systems of early learning for those who are aged between 0 and 2, which it was a good reminder from Cliff this morning actually that we talk about the missing middle of 2 to 5, generally about early childhood development, but actually that early learning in the 0 to 2 and stimulation and all those kind of things. So it's a kind of cop-out answer, but yes, we are interested because we're interested in 0 to 8, and we're interested in all of those domains that lead to good quality childhood development and good childhood outcomes. So it's certainly something that we're very interested in, and as I said before, we really want to it's a bit of a tall order, and we want to make sure that we're not overstretching ourselves, but we do want to make sure that we have a range of research programs across different parts of the life course, but also looking at the whole life course, that are in different sectors, but are also cross-sectoral or intersectoral, and in a range of different countries that are at different stages of their ECD journey. Again, it's about being realistic that we will only have a limited pot of money, so what can we do with that we feel is most cost effective and is generating at least some evidence that is generalizable and able to be used. So we've got quite a job on our hands to work out where that balance lies, but really important points. Thank you.
Thanks. I remembered the third point I was going to make about this question of research into implementation at scale, and it was with reference to another question here about what will our government entry points be, I think. Will it be just national or sub-regional? As Amy said in the presentation, we will be interested in various levels of government. For us, the most important question, I think, is at which point and at which level a service is delivered and who is responsible for that. Where does scale become meaningful? And what does scale mean? So in Kenya, we've heard a lot this week about ECD service delivery through the counties. That's where scale and service delivery finds its meaning. So if there was a world in which in a few years' time part of this research program was looking at the Kenyan ECD devolved delivery model, I would fully expect it to be focused at that county level, because that is where service delivery finds meaning. And that is where the system is being utilised and where the system can be stress tested. And I think that's quite an important concept for us, which is if we want to understand how to improve systems at scale, we want to be able to stress test that system to see what it is capable of doing currently and where its blockages or incoherences might be. And if the services are being delivered at the county level, stress testing a national level sort of landscape, which is really for policy formulation, not for implementation, would be likely a misdirection of resource. So for us, scale is where it is meaningful in a given context and where the system can be stress tested.
So I've just been asked that we wrap up pretty quickly, so I'll just make two very quick, hopefully, last points, and I'm sorry if there's anyone whose question we haven't answered, but do come and talk to us. So one was around, are there areas where we should just actually intervene rather than generate more evidence? Absolutely. The aim of this programme is really to look at where the gaps are, not about what we already know. If we already know it, we should be working with our governments at the right level to make sure that we're implementing evidence-based policy research, which in itself is tricky. And the second one was about this question between joining up those two questions around efficacy and cost effectiveness. And it's, again, a bit of a cop-out, but you'll see that on the diagram there are arrows between the two. So the idea is that whatever we set up, findings from one area will feed in to the other and vice versa. So we don't see them as totally separate. The idea is that there is some mechanism either within the same research program or between research programs to make sure that those messages and evidence is being fed from one to the other. I'm really sorry we have to stop there, but please do come and talk to us, email us, let us know your thoughts, whether it's comments on the wording of the term, the theory of change, we're really happy to receive those, or broader issues, please come talk. Thank you very much for your concentration pre-lunch, and enjoy your lunch.
Thank you very much. Amy will have something to say as well. So, maybe not one of the point before we understand there may be something there. I'm afraid I'm out of business card. Yeah, there you go. Hi. James. Diego. Yes, yeah, how's it going?